They are hunters, farmers, harvesters, gliders, herders, weavers, and carpenters. They are ants, and they are a big part of our world, comprising over 14,000 species and a large fraction of animal biomass in most terrestrial ecosystems. Like other invertebrates, ants are important for the functioning of ecosystems. They play vital roles from aerating soil and dispersing seeds and nutrients, to scavenging and preying on other species. Yet a global view of their diversity is lacking. Now, researchers from the Biodiversity and Biocomplexity Unit at the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology, OIST, in collaboration with multiple institutes around the world, have developed a high-resolution map that combines existing knowledge with machine learning to estimate and visualize T. The maps and dataset were published in an article in Science Advances. This study helps to add ants, and terrestrial invertebrates in general, to the discussion on biodiversity conservation, said Professor Evan Economo, who leads the Biodiversity and Biocomplexity Unit. We need to know the locations of high-diversity centers of invertebrates so that we know the areas that can be the focus of future research and environmental protection. Professor Economo added that the resource will also serve to answer a number of biological and evolutionary questions, such as how researchers around the world contributed and helped identify errors. More than 14,000 species were considered, which varied dramatically in the amount of data available. However, the vast majority of these records, while containing a description of the sampled location, did not have the precise coordinates needed for mapping. To address this, co-author Kenneth Dudley from OIST's Environmental Informatics section built a computational workflow to estimate the coordinates from the available data, which also checked all the data for errors. For species with less data, they constructed shapes surrounding the data points. For species with more data, the researchers predicted the distribution of each species using statistical models that they tuned for optimal complexity. The researchers brought these estimates together to form a global map, divided into a grid of 20 km by 20 km squares, that showed an estimate of the number of ant species per square, called the species richness. They also created a map that showed the number of ant species with very small ranges per square, called the species rarity. In general, species with small ranges are particularly vulnerable to environmental changes. However, there was another problem to overcome: sampling bias. Some areas of the world that we expected to be centers of diversity were not showing up on our map, but ants in these regions were not well studied, explained Dr. Cass. Other areas were extremely well sampled, for example parts of the USA and Europe, and this difference in sampling can impact our estimates of global diversity. So, the researchers utilized machine learning to predict how their diversity would change if they sampled all areas around the world equa. Professor Economo said, "This gives us a kind of treasure map, which can guide us to where we should explore next and look for new species with restricted ranges." Okinawa, in southern Japan, was identified as a center for rarity, as many species endemic to these islands have very small ranges, Arun. Thus, places like Okinawa are critical for environmental protection to conserve biodiversity. When the researchers compared the rarity and richness of ant distributions to the comparatively well-studied amphibians, birds, mammals, and reptiles, they found that ants were about as different from these vertebrate groups as the vertebrate groups were from each other. which was unexpected given T. This is important as it suggests that priority areas for vertebrate diversity may also have a high diversity of invertebrate species. But, at the same time, it is necessary to recognize that ant biodiversity patterns do have unique features. For example, the Mediterranean and East Asia show up as diversity centers for ants more than the vertebrates. Finally, the researchers looked at how well protected these areas of high ant diversity are. They found that it was a low percentage. Only 15% of the top 10% of ant rarity centers had some sort of legal protection, such as a national park or reserve, which is less than existing protection for vertebrates. Clearly, we have a lot of work to do to protect these critical areas, concluded Professor Economo. Make a difference. Sponsored Opportunity Story Source. Materials provided by Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology, OIST, Graduate University. Original written by Lucy Dickey. Note: content may be edited for style and length. The Global Distribution of Known and Undiscovered Ant Biodiversity. Science Advances. 2022. 8/31, doi. 10. 1126, SCIADV. ABP 9908. Cite this page. Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology. OIST, Graduate University. New global map of ant biodiversity reveals areas that may hide undiscovered species. Science Daily, the 3rd of August 2022. ift.tt/dpvpkcr. https://ift. dpvpkcr. Accessed August 3, 2022. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe my channel for more videos.